the Harbir Singh Podcast.
It's a huge honour to have Jas Kaur Sleep Coach on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to this one because I spent 4 years sleep deprived and high on coffee, trying to get through that period of my life. So I've got a lot to learn from Jas, and as I'm sure everyone else does. Before we go any further, please smash the thumbs up button and also comment and share this post with anyone who you think can benefit, so that we can get this information out to as many people as possible and help as many people as possible. So, Benji, can you start with telling us a little bit about yourself?
So me, I am a mum of 3. I have Harbir Singh, who's 6. I have a Jas Kaur, who's 4. And my youngest is Sahib Singh, who is 2 years old. Now, I've always wanted to start my business. I've never known what I wanted to go into. And I guess it was over lockdown. One day I was just, something's not right. Why is none of my children sleeping through the night? Why are they still waking up? I keep getting told that they should be sleeping like this way or that way. And it was never 3 times. Surely I can't get it wrong 3 times. And I guess I just started researching. Like, I'm a biology geek. My degree's in human biology with psychology. So I guess I started to research into what normal biology sleep was. And it turned out that my children were actually sleeping perfectly normally, and as they should at their age. And that's what kind of got me into sleep coaching. I did a lot of research, actually read quite a lot of books. And then I just thought, this is probably something that I'm a bit too passionate about. Started helping family, friends, and there you are. I came into sleep coaching. Before that, I worked in the NHS, doing some project work behind the scenes of hospitals, CCGs. Still doing a little bit of that here and there at the moment, and trying to balance out life, I guess, with 3 kids and a business as well.
Wow, that's amazing. I think women are superwomen, how they manage. I was talking to Darshko today about how women have to do a lot. They have to, they have kids, they have to manage the kids, they have to give birth, they have to, the responsibilities are different to what they were kind of 50 years ago. So it's incredible, the amount of resilience they have. In terms of the Scottish system, is it different, the NHS?
Oh yeah, it's quite different. I mean, I didn't do any NHS work while I was in Scotland. All of that was in the last 6 to 8 years while I've been here in England.
And how's that transition been from going from like the worst part of the country to the better part?
Yeah. I will always be Scottish at heart, always.
I'm just teasing you.
Definitely left the best part of the country behind.
Yeah. How has that transition been? Because that can't be easy, going all the way from Scotland to England.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie and say it's been easy, it has been quite difficult. I've been lucky that I've got my older sister who lives in Gravesend, so she's not too far away. But I think when it comes to marriage and starting a family, whether or not you are near your family or far, it's still hard, I mean, my husband's absolutely amazing, my mum's absolutely amazing with the support that I get, but it's still hard, and a lot of the times it's just about understanding actually parenting is difficult. It's not that we're doing anything wrong. It's not that there's something wrong with our kids. It's difficult, and sometimes we just need to accept that and remove that pressure. There's a lot of pressure on mums now, actually, whether it's work, whether it's, are you parenting correctly? You should be feeding this way, you should be feeding that way. It's just so much pressure left, right and centre, and I think that's what makes it difficult more than whether or not I mean, it's a big thing having family nearby. Of course, it's helpful, but I do feel for a lot of us who don't have the village, it's about kind of removing the pressure and lowering your expectations, especially when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, with Bhagat, with my eldest, we really struggled because Dashko's a doctor and she's very analytical and it used to be much more so. So she kind of had this belief, which is self-affirmed through her whole life, which is if I work hard at something, I can be good at it. So she kind of read all the books and did all the research, and then she thought, my son's going to go sleep at this time, he's going to wake up at this time, we're going to do this, we're going to feed him at this time. And when he was born, it was just complete chaos. And I remember once she was trying to sleep train him, and she tried cry out, and I went to work. And I came home and she was crying on the sofa. And I said, I thought the baby was meant to cry out and not you. And she was like, I can't do this. So and then with Jup, we just kind of let go of our expectations, and the second one was a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not just parenting, is it? It's relationships, it's everything. And I think when it comes to sleep training, I mean, the sleep training industry is huge. It's so huge, and it's the pressure as well to sleep train. And sometimes you're in that moment where you're thinking, there's nothing else I can physically do for my child right now, so I'm just going to leave them to cry, you know. And I think, and then afterwards, I get a lot of moms saying, like, they've just got so much guilt for doing it, whether or not it worked, they still have that guilt. And I think it's important to understand that actually, you don't need to go down that route if you don't feel it's right for you. For some parents, it works. For some, and again, it depends on what you mean by works, you know. And I think, I mean, we could talk a lot about sleep training. I don't know if it's one route you want to take.
That is worth diving into, because the people who probably have an interest in this are people who are going to have kids, or who have young kids and who are struggling with getting their kids to sleep. And I was on Instagram the other day, and there was a mum who I'm friends with, and she was doing a live, and she was saying how she did cry out, and you know, it was all the pros for cry out, and we didn't do that, and we went down the co-sleeping route, and just listening to her made me feel like we had got it all wrong. And I think personally, obviously I don't really know anything about this, but I think whichever system you go down, you just got to do what's right for you, as opposed to your child has to fit into this mold, or needs to be like this, and needs to go sleep at this time, and has to sleep for 8 hours continuous. Yeah,
I'm with you, and I think it depends on the child. Some babies can fall asleep at 7 o'clock and wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and have that 12-hour stretch, but it's not the reality for a majority of babies.
Yeah, I hate those babies.
They do exist, but
Dashko used to tell me this child's mum says he goes to sleep by himself at 7 o'clock and wakes up like 3 days later. I used to be very jealous.
Yeah, and I think, and it's about us parents knowing that it's okay to support your little one to sleep. It's completely normal. Babies and toddlers are just biologically hardwired to be near us. So when we try and separate them, actually, it's hard, because it's biology that we're trying to change, and it's not easy to change biology, and it's not going to catch up with society anytime soon. Whereas, on the other hand, we've got society telling us that actually your baby should be independent by now. And it's a shame, because we've got a lot of first-time parents, and we're trying to do what's best for our children. But actually, all these things that are thrown at us doesn't really fit in to what we feel is right most of the time. But we do it. We feel pressurised to do it because everyone else is doing it. So whether that's co-sleeping, whether that's sleep training, whether it's supporting your little one to sleep, it's just, if it works for you and you don't mind feeding your child to sleep, or you don't mind walking them to sleep and you're enjoying it, then continue. But if it gets to a point where you're getting mentally stressed out, or if you are wanting your husband to be able to put your little one to sleep, but you still want to continue breastfeeding, all of these things you can still do that without having to sleep train, or without having to stop breastfeeding, for example, if it's feeding to sleep. And it's just about, I think it's about allowing parents to be informed of their choices rather than telling them what to do.
That makes a lot of sense, and I like your approach a lot, because it's not just prescriptive and trying to fit a child into a model. It's figuring out what works for that dynamic of child and parent, because mums may need to go to work, and they may not be able to to wake up multiple times at night, and they may need to put systems in place so that they can get a decent rest. And so in terms of your three, were they very different?
Yeah, my first was just he was up every 2 hours on the dot, and that included nappy changing in between, feeding him, and then he was up in the second hour, and I had just barely got back to sleep. It was really, really, really difficult, and I was lucky my husband was so good with the nappy changing, so I could sleep that longer stretch. And obviously things changed with my second one. She was a little bit easier, actually. My husband was like, no, you can do this one by yourself. I don't blame him, because he had work and everything as well. So with the second one overnight, she was a little bit less. We were still co-sleeping. I co-slept with all three of my children. But for my second one, she wasn't waking up every 2 hours. It must have been every 3.5 hours. Her personality was completely different. And I guess it was like relearning motherhood again. And I think that's also important for mums, because sometimes when you're having your second baby, you think you know it all. I mean, I've had my third now, and I learned so much with my third. I actually amazed myself.
Wow.
And again, when you have each child, you learn a lot about the different kind of sleepy cues, for example. One of them would, my eldest his sleepy cues were very kind of obvious, and I was able to put him to sleep in time. Whereas my second, it was just from 0 to, that was it. She was crying and much harder to settle.
My son was that.
And my advice here for parents would be, for every child that you have, or even if it's a different development phase, sometimes the sleepy cues change. And it's about learning, especially in those first 4 months, is learning about what the sleepy cues are. And we have this kind of filter that, oh my goodness, they're crying now, they must be tired, let's put them to sleep. And then you're there rocking them to sleep half an hour later, and actually they clearly weren't sleepy, it was something else. And it's just about learning what the other cue was. Are they bored? Are they overly stimulated? Is it not enough stimulation? Did they just want to change the scenery? Is the music too loud? It could be so many different things, but we just think it's always sleep. But the mums that I work with, actually, a lot of the time, our consultations are about things other than sleep to improve the sleep. There's so much that goes on in a little one's day that you need to be more aware of, rather than kind of sticking straight to, I must be doing something wrong, whereas it's nothing wrong. It's just about being more aware and more in line and more in tune with your baby, rather than an app or what the book said or what the auntie's saying, or what the new magazine is saying. It's a lot of the time we look for answers outside, and actually it's just looking deep in, thinking what we think's wrong with the little one, looking at them, learning from them as well.
Yeah, that's really insightful. On the point of auntie, I went to the Gurdwara the other day, and there was this elderly auntie there drinking tea, and she goes to me, "Tere nyane kinne healthy hai?" And no, she said naughty. She said, "Tere nyane kinne naughty hai?" And I didn't say anything to her. Obviously, I wouldn't say anything to an elderly person, but there is that pressure. And after, there were loads of kids playing in the Gurdwara, but after that, I told my kids that they're not allowed to play; they just have to sit there. And it's weird, because if they're at home, I would just let them play with other kids. But how do you deal with if you've got in-laws at home, and if you've got auntie and people visiting, and there's that pressure of, your kids should be seen and not heard, and that kind of stuff? How do you come across that?
Oh yeah, definitely. All the time, actually. Recently at Gurpur, someone had said, "Tere nyane kinne healthy hai?" And I was just like, well, it's 10 of them. It's not only my 3, But when it comes to the Gurdwara, I strongly feel that actually there's more reason to take your child to the Gurdwara than not take them. And we in Bedford, and I know Kiddie Sangat is across the UK, actually it's across the world, isn't it, Kiddie Sangat? And we started Kiddie Sangat on a Friday morning for mums like me and dads. Actually, dads were welcome as well to come along and help them get used to the Gurdwara environment with the auntie, with the children, with the babies, getting used to being at the Gurdwara at a time when it wasn't as busy. And I think that's so important, to expose your children to the Gurdwara. With auntie, on the other hand, how would you deal with them? And I guess it's just explaining to them, auntie, I'm trying to come to the Gurdwara. They will get used to it, and that you shouldn't really let the auntie put you off coming to the Gurdwara. And I mean, it's different if your child is running across in front of Maharaj, throwing a tantrum or throwing toys around, that's different. But I think if it's a mum that's scared of coming to the Gurdwara because they've been told off before, it's about thinking of creative ways. What can you do at the Gurdwara with your child to help them kind of get used to it? For example, bringing in crayons and colouring sheets, stickers, anything that could keep them occupied, sitting next to you. And yeah, definitely starting from a young age to get the baby used to it, getting used to the Gavin in the background, getting used to having pushad at a certain time, waiting, sitting nicely. Yeah. I don't know if that answers your question or if I've just
No, it does.
blabbered on.
No, it does. It does. And I think I was talking to your dad about this a couple of weeks ago, and we were sitting in the Gurdwara, and he had his kids who are probably a little bit older than mine, but he was saying it's hard for kids. We expect them to just sit there, and they might not understand that much, but we expect them to sit for prolonged periods of time and just behave, and it's difficult for kids to have that kind of attention span. And as a parent, you do feel the pressure because you want your kids to behave, obviously, especially in certain places like the Gurdwara. You want them to be respectful, but they do have a limited attention span. They do not have the best reasoning skills and stuff. So, and what's the alternative? The alternative is you don't take them until they're 6 years old. I mean, that doesn't seem like a great alternative either. So with your consultation, sorry.
Can I just say something before we move on? And I think part of the whole kind of Gurdwara aspect is, what do we do at home with our children? And I noticed this a lot in lockdown. And I remember being super upset when we weren't allowed to have any Vaisakhi celebrations at the Gurdwara. And it was like, well, Daya Singh was 4 and then Aziz was 2. And it's just they're at an age where I want to tell them about Guru Gobind Singh Ji, and I want to show them and we want to be part of the celebrations. But actually, it ended up being such a lovely Vaisakhi at home with Maharaji at home. We pretended our living room was a Gurdwara, and we had the white chadra out. We made prasad together. Mum made prasad with the kids together, and they got to wear their bani. Aziz had her new suit on, and it was just really connecting them to Guruji and really telling them the Sakhi. And it was like a bit of an eye-opener, thinking, actually, we would have been rushing getting to the Gurdwara on time. We would have, it just would have been a bit more stressful experience. And I think the more we can do this type of thing at home with our children, whether it's putting the white chadar out and pretending you're at the Gurdwara and do some type of a role play. That's what we did that day, actually. The kids loved it. My husband was a bit... but the kids loved it, and it kind of helped them connect back to remembering what we used to do at the Gurdwara. And if we can do that now, or sometimes what I do with mine actually in the car on the way to the Gurdwara is, can anyone remember, or can anyone remind Mummy what we do when we first get to the Gurdwara? And it's taking the shoes off. They love this routine. They love the kind of patterns that we do. They know once to do Mathadik nicely, and we walk around Maharajji. If we sit down for a little while, we'll get prasad, and it's reminding them and getting them excited of what's to come. And for kids, actually, a lot of the time they want reassurance, or they want to know what's coming, rather than it being kind of suddenly dawned on them that you have to sit here now for 1 full hour. But if you can explain to them at home or in the car, we're going to sit at the Gurdwara, it's going to be quite long, your legs might get tired, maybe you want to stand up for a little bit to stretch them, maybe you want to change your legs the way you're sitting, and again, it depends on how old they are and if they can understand that and expect it. But we can't expect a 2-year-old, for example, to sit for the full hour. So how prepared can we be? Can we take a quiet toy? Can we take the stickers? Can we take them to a langar hall for 10 minutes and then come back out? Can we have the dad, let's say, taking the kids for the first half hour, and then us sitting down for half an hour while they're outside? And I think it's a lot of pressure on us, but really we just have to think of different ways, what works for us, what works with a little one, before we just go straight into the divan, let's say.
Okay. So slightly personal question next. Darshika wanted a 3rd child at one point, and she was adamant she wanted a 3rd child. And I was adamant I didn't. And I was looking at the research on it, and they said the stress levels peak at a 3rd child, and after that you get into a rhythm. So if you have a 4th, 5th, and 6th, it's not as hard as having a 3rd. So what made you want to have a 3rd child? Because you don't have much of a gap, 2 years in between each child.
Yeah, we've got a very short gap. I guess I've always wanted 3 children, actually, and I'm so lucky I've got my 3 children. I slightly actually changed my mind when Aziz Kaur was born. I think after 6 months, it was just so difficult. The transition from 1 to 2
It's
was
crazy,
such a
isn't it?
shock to me. It was just, I'm not even going to say it was easy. It was so difficult. And I just remember being quite open with my sisters about how difficult. Dea Singh was just, he's such a sweetest boy. The only naughty thing he did was pick his nose, right? Literally, he was such a sweet boy. And then the next minute, all this jealousy he had of his little sister. And I thought, because we knew she was going to be a girl, and I thought that he was just going to have this immense love for her. And don't get me wrong, we did see him being a very loving big brother, but there were times that he was not nice. And I guess kind of being a mum and seeing your child not be nice to your other child and thinking that you've done something wrong or I didn't prep him enough. And I thought, well, I did prep him. I proper prepped him. And you can do anything you want, but when you have a second or a third or a fourth child coming into the family, you can't expect your baby or your child to just get used to it. You know, they're used to the attention. They're not used to having someone else there that's as important as they are, or if not even more important. And for me, it was a big learning curve, just thinking, actually, it's not jealousy, it's just learning. It's kind of like grieving, actually, because you're not only their mum anymore, and it's letting go of mummy is being mine. So it's sometimes, again, it comes down to the pressure on the mum and dad. Just release that pressure that you have to make your older child like your younger child. It's going to be up and down, and I guess you just have to be there showing your older child that you still love them as much as you did before, or if not more. And it does take time, and I guess the transition, it was hard, especially for the third one as well. I guess I was a bit more knowing that it wasn't going to be as smooth and I wasn't going to know everything. But yeah, it's hard. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it. You know, it's definitely worth it. I mean, there's a group of and Dea and a Sahib wore their kurte pajama, and they both had the yellow patke on, and they were so happy. And Sahib, my youngest, just kept saying their baji photo, and I've got so many beautiful pictures of them just hugging, and they were standing doing fateh, and it's just like, for these moments, it's so worth it when you fight.
Yeah, it's really sweet.
And Dea Singh's at an age where tonight he was reading the Mata Pag Kaur book to Sahib. Bless him, some of the words were really hard, but I didn't tell him to read that book, so they must have just picked it up himself. And it's so nice, you know. These are the kind of moments that I try and record and remind myself when they're having their tantrum or when they're fighting. I think back to, okay, so this is a moment I just need to keep myself calm, deal with them, and then I guess help them deal with whatever it is that they're going for, that it's okay that you are fighting. Let's look at, I'm kind of going into how to look into sibling when they're fighting, how to deal with that. Do you want me to go into that a little bit? Because that's
I think that would be useful, but
having more than one child is, although we have these lovely moments, a lot of the time you're trying to get them to share a toy or getting them to stop fighting over the most littlest thing it could be. It comes down to, now I might be talking about it, it doesn't mean I follow it all the time. I definitely do not. I mean, I do lose my calm quite often. And it's about telling them, with Dea Singh and Aziz, they're old enough to understand that actually it's okay to be sad that Sahib's taking your toy. It's completely okay to feel angry that he's taking your toy, but it's not okay to hit back. It's not okay to scream. It's not okay to have a tantrum. But emphasising that it's okay to have feelings, and it goes the same for mums and dads that are feeling overwhelmed with parenting. It's completely okay to feeling sad, angry, really depressed. I mean, you'll know this as well, actually, quite a lot. And it's just about highlighting that to our children. No matter how young they are, it's okay for them to feel however they're feeling. But with a 4-year-old or even a 3-year-old, you can start telling them, instead of doing this, can we use our hands to show them what you want? Can you use your mouth and your words to help Sahib, who's only 2 years old, understand why it is that you want your toy back or why he can't play with it? It's your homework. That's the hardest part, actually, is homework. Trying to get homework done for a 4 and a 6-year-old when there's a 2-year-old in the mix. trying to get their pen and paper, ripping it apart.
Yeah, these are all challenges. I guess adversity makes you grow and makes you stronger, and as a family as well. There's a couple of things that came to mind when you were speaking there. One was, a friend told me after we had our second that having a child is like having a pet, like a pet dog, and then having 2 children is like living in a zoo. And I wish that you told me that earlier. Probably would have still done it, but anyway. So I don't know what 3 might be like, but
yeah.
Are your 2 eldest in school?
Yeah, so Sahib, Asis and Thea are at school. Yeah.
So how do you kind of do? Yeah. How do you do your self-care in terms of making sure you get enough rest because you got business and you got kids, you got husband?
I talked a lot about this actually. To myself and my husband. I think when it comes to self-care, a lot of the time, especially when Asis was at home, so when I was doing my studying for my sleep coaching, Asis was at home. I started in lockdown actually, so they were all at home. And actually on that point, a lot of mums would say, oh my goodness, you're so amazing for studying while you're homeschooling. And I was only homeschooling there at that point. And I just remember saying to them, actually, if I was not studying at night time, I think I would have been a complete crazy mess. Like I needed that. For me, that was my self-care, was I'm taking time out. I wasn't working at that point. I'm taking time out for my own learning, for my development. I'm getting my brain working on something that's other than adding when I was doing his homework, other than nappy changing and just stopping the fighting. I needed that. For me, that was just such a big, it was just, it totally saved my sanity during lockdown actually. And I think a lot of the time the pressure is to have a full-on spa day, going out for dinner. That just doesn't make, that actually stresses me out. It's just not me. So it was, I guess, looking inside, what is it that I like doing? And I think over lockdown is when because I was missing Sangat so much, I started thinking a lot more about what was my self-care. And it came down to, that everyone's different, but for me it was, I totally lost track of my Kirtan. And it wasn't just the lockdown, but it was knowing that I'm not even listening to Kirtan anymore. Like even on my, when I wasn't working, so I wasn't having it on in the background, or in the car, I wasn't putting it on. I was kind of trying to speak to the kids, and it was about bringing that back. And just even if I was doing one Shabad here or there, that was for me, that was my self-care, that was my connection to Guruji, because I'm so bad at doing my part. So I've totally, I've lost that part of me, and I think a lot of the mums feel the same. But again, like, I know Benji, Darshan Benji, your wife, is doing that Simran on a Thursday evening, which I know every mum needs to know about that, because sometimes it's just, if something's there in the diary, you're more likely to kind of sit down and do it, think about yourself. And once you kind of get back into it, then you start realizing, what is my self-care? Is it only the, what is it that you're doing at the moment? For me, it's not really going out.
It's not the big extravagant things, it's the...
I get, yeah, it doesn't need to be that. And also sometimes it's just making sure you're having your shower in the morning, you're wearing clean clothes, you are having that time to chat things through, chat the week through, whether it's with your husband, whether it's with your sisters. And it doesn't need to be anything huge, or time consuming. It's, for me, sometimes I started doing this breathing every few hours during the day, even if I wasn't stressed out, just to be like, okay, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Before I get stressed out, what can I do to calm myself down? But for me, with self-care, it was just thinking about what it was that was connecting myself to Guruji, but also during lockdown, I felt so lost. Like, what do I need to do for myself? And luckily, I was very lucky in just finding the course that was right for me. Just get my head back into it.
That's amazing. And
sorry, this cough
personally,
is just...
I think
it's
self-care.
Yeah, sorry, am I sticking? Am I sticking?
No, you're doing great. Yeah, I think learning is a great way to feel like you're growing and developing and not stagnating in life. I had a question regarding your process. When a parent contacts you for a consultation and wants to get coaching, and a lot of people I know now are doing that, and I definitely recommend they check out your Instagram page and your website. But what's the process?
Yeah, so the process is you would, if you're having any type of sleep issues, we would have, first of all, a 15-minute consultation. And there's a few reasons for this 15-minute consultation. One is, of course, to make sure that that I'm the kind of right fit for the mum. Secondly, to make sure that the mum is not, so let's say if a baby's waking up every hour or every 30, 40 minutes, I want to make sure in that 15, 20 minutes that there's not an underlying issue that's causing the child to wake up, whether it's eczema, whether it's an underlying health condition, whether it's an allergy. I want to make sure that I wouldn't take a mum on if I think it might be allergy. I would say, I think you should get this checked out first. There's no point working on sleep when you know it's a completely different issue that's making the little one wake up.
The sleep difficult,
but also, more importantly, sometimes mums don't need my support. A lot of the times mum would say to me, I'm feeding my child to sleep. He doesn't sleep any other way, but I really need to get him to sleep by himself. And I would say, okay, so is this because you're struggling? Is this because you're going back to work? Is this because you want your little one to now sleep in their own room if they're over 6 months? And sometimes the mums say, oh no, because they're never going to learn how to sleep on their own, or it's just such a bad habit. It's not a bad habit. You're doing completely fine, unless it's affecting you mentally, or there's a medical reason why you need to stop breastfeeding. Then actually you can continue doing something that's biologically normal and really nice and bonding for you. You don't need to stop, and it's outside pressure that's making some mums feel as if they have to stop rocking to sleep or anything else. And I would just say to the mum, you really don't need my help. If you go away and you think about it, and actually maybe you want to learn some tips on how to gently move away from breastfeeding or rocking to sleep, then that's fine. But actually the bottom line is, if you're coping okay and you're happy, you don't need to. So, before fully going on to a consultation. So anyway, and then I would drop the mum an email confirming the packages. I've got various packages. I've got a one-off troubleshoot call. I've got a package where I would have a full insight into the child sleeping, their day sleep, their night sleep, what kind of goes on in their day. Once I've analysed it, we'd have a 1 hour consultation, looking at all the solutions. What can we do to help you, whatever it is a mum wants to do, and whether it's hourly wakings, whether it's waking up 3 times a night. Now, waking up 3 times a night is completely normal for younger babies. If it's a 2, a 3-year-old, and if it's not bothering the mum, that's okay. Continue. You don't need my support. But if it's for whatever reason is bothering, it's disturbing your sleep too much, it's disturbing another sibling, then of course we would kind of work to limit those wakings without doing any of the sleep training. And you would have weekly catch-up calls, you'd have support, email support, WhatsApp support in between to kind of get to their sleep goals. Now,
That's
sorry?
That's brilliant. Sounds great.
Yeah,
I wish we had utilised it.
I really try and say to my mums, first and foremost, that even though we've discussed a sleep plan, so I'd write a sleep plan out, whatever we've discussed and whatever the kind of next actions are, I'd write it out for the mum, so they've got that to refer back to over the coming weeks. But I also say to the mums that I am the expert on sleep. I will never be the expert on your child. And that's really important, because although I might suggest a technique that's worked for 3 or 4 families that I've worked with in this month or this week, it might not work for this mum. And I say to the mum, it's okay for you to tell me if something isn't working for you. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with your little one. It just means this particular method is not right for you. Let's try something different. So there's like unlimited, they can change what the sleep plan or the methods, because I'm not going to say, well, it's you must be doing something wrong, And sometimes, whether they're teething or they're ill, I do sometimes like to put a pause on any change. I think it's very unfair for the little one to have to change something in their routine when they're unwell and they need that extra comfort. So I do try and encourage parents, if your child is ill, if your child is going through a development phase, to give them that support and the comfort without feeling that you're going to create a bad habit. Now, for some babies, yeah, they might want that for a little bit longer, and then we have to kind of do a few techniques to kind of move back to where you were. But majority of the time, they do go back to sleeping how they were before the illness. So this is why it's so important to not get more stressed, because when you're ill, it's the whole house is upside down, isn't it, when a child or when a parent is ill? So it's about doing the most easiest thing that you need to do to get your child back to sleep without feeling the pressure of creating a bad habit.
What books do you recommend? They don't have to be on the topic of sleep, but I'm an avid reader, and I like to ask my guests about the books that they read.
Yeah, so
if you could only recommend one or two.
Okay, so first and foremost, definitely Lindsay Hookway, My Family Sleep. It's just such an empowering book that looks at the biology of the child, the instinct of the mother, and it just busts all the sleep myths out there. It's nothing like do this, like you were saying about the strict routines, the sleeping 7 to 7, and it's mind blowing. Definitely that one. My second one would probably be Gary Chapman, The Love Languages book, simply because it's such an eye opener when you read it as a parent and you read it thinking of your child and your child's love language. A lot of the time, if a child is asking for comfort, and if their love language is touch and they want a hug, and we say, no, we've given you so many hugs today, and we reject it, and it makes you feel, it just kind of opens your eyes to, actually, I can't say no to their love language. This is their way of connecting with me, and it's our job, first and foremost, as mums and dads, is to provide that comfort for our children. And again, it's the pressure that we shouldn't be hugging them, we shouldn't be comforting them when they cry, or we should expect them to get up after a fall and be fine. But actually, we can withhold that comfort from them, can we? And it's definitely a book that I recommend mums and dads.
Awesome. And where can people get in touch with you? How can they connect with you?
Instagram, Jas_Sleep Coach, and my website, www.jas-core.com.
Awesome. That was a really good chat, and I learned a lot from it. And I could probably talk to you for hours, because there's so many things that I could, we could talk about conflict with siblings. We could talk about what's the correct way to discipline them, educate them. There's so many different topics that I think parents need help on. So hopefully you'll come back on a future podcast.